Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for coming to this lecture on advanced dog capture tools and technologies. We're going to be doing a case study from Vieques, Puerto Rico. Let me quickly introduce myself. My name is John Peaveler. I'm the owner of Humane Innovations. This is a small business that focuses on manufacturing and sales of equipment related to animal handling and capture and animal services generally. I also do consulting and training on animal handling, capture, disaster, dog population management, all these types of things. So we're gonna do this case study on Vieques, Puerto Rico. But really, what we want to talk about is how do we catch difficult animals. And so this case study will sort of help us conceptualize what that can look like. A lot of programs get stuck after a certain period when they've been doing capture, maybe even at scale, and maybe you chose a certain methodology as your primary, and you may have caught a lot of dogs or cats or whatever with that. But frequently, what happens is the programs, particularly government level programs, start with just one or two capture options, and a certain number of animals learn from experience that that tool, that person, that vehicle, all of those things are bad, and so they will resist capture and become much more difficult to capture, particularly by those people wearing those clothes, driving those cars, and with that particular methodology. And so ideally, we would start with more tools and equipment, but that's not always possible. So the sooner we can add more advanced capture technologies and tools, the sooner we'll be able to catch those more difficult animals. And so we'll talk about sort of the background, how I came to be involved in this project, some of the preparation that went into it, what it looked like in real time, and a couple of conclusions from it as well. So I actually got involved with Vieques, Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria in 2017. And so my colleague and I, Dave Polly here, let me see if I can highlight Dave. This is Dave right there. So we were dropped off by helicopter, I don't know, a few days after the storm. And kind of felt like we just got abandoned in Vieques, but it's actually a really good place to be abandoned. We weren't abandoned; we were just dropped off into the gathering dark that day, and spent the better part of a month helping to respond to that major disaster. And so, what we learned along the way is that it's an incredible community, and there are a lot of animal lovers there. So we started doing some community medicine, and we did some helicopter surveys of horse and dog populations. We did equine medicine, and linked up with our Big Fat Caribbean Rescue, which is still on the island and still doing incredible work. So they identified very early on that sheltering was not the solution that their island needed. Putting animals into kennels and cages and whatever was no part of a solution that made any sense on a small island, as it doesn't in many communities. And so they decided they're going to focus on being a foster-based rescue, sending animals off the island if and when needed, when there was no place for them, but really trying to get upstream and working on sterilization of owned and unowned animals. And doing all sorts of other medicine and outreach and supply distribution, all that kind of thing to just help improve the lives of animals, change the way that animals are thought of, and really have done an incredible job. And over the course of the last however many years it's been now, I have gone back several times. Dave Polly has been back several times. And so over time, we've met a lot of dogs and we've caught a lot of animals on this island using primarily box traps and hand capture methods, some nets, like not a ton of tools. We've had chemical capture a couple of times. This is Lorraine Mosier. She's the one of the president and founders of our Big Fat Caribbean Rescue. So just a little context of what Vieques looks like, some of the fun we've had on the project, and lots of cats and more dogs and more dogs and more observation, more tools. A lot of horse problems there is an unexpected challenge that you face there. They will bother your traps as well. So you can see that we've done a lot of capture, a lot of different ways for quite a number of years now, and the result has been extremely positive. A lot of nonprofit players have come, a lot of different individuals. So Dave and I are proud to have had the role that we've had, but it's been this one small, tiny little slice of a much larger pie. And so Come last year, we were contacted and said, "Hey, we need to catch some specific dogs that we've not been able to catch." So over the course of time, they've gotten more equipment, they've gotten more skills in using that equipment. So they've got some incredible local trappers as well. But they had some dogs that still were resisting capture, still were producing offspring, that were creating a big financial and welfare problem on the island. And so we started talking about, all right, so what steps can you take now? And what can we do to help you? So what equipment are we going to need? What are these procedures going to look like? How are we going to catch these animals? And so we sat and we talked about where they're at now, the programming that they're doing. Why don't we come and we'll do some more of this TNR for you. We've got just a few really difficult dogs left. But we're going to need some specialized equipment, and you're going to need to do some prep work for us before we get there. And so, as part of the prep work that needed to happen was these dogs needed to be fed pretty much daily, in the same place at the same time, and sort of help us figure out exactly where they're going to be and exactly how they engage with their environment right there. So the more scheduled we can make any animal, the easier it's going to be to catch them. It's not to say that that's 100% necessary, but it can be for certain individuals. That somebody needs to be feeding this animal consistently because we need to know where it eats and where it sleeps and where it's going to be and when it's going to be there. So a lot of that work was done for us before we got there. And because it's only a couple of animals that we were really trying to focus on, they were able to do that quite effectively. So project preparation, we needed some equipment. And so one thing that really makes a big difference in modern capture are cellular cameras. And so this, I'm not a brand ambassador at all. This is the brand that I like to use. This is the Rio Link. This is a solar powered camera. You can see here on the hood of the car, the solar panel, me getting ready to install it. This is about a $200 camera. It has pan tilt zoom, and so you can spin it around and you can look at different things. You can program those things and say, I want to look at the trap, and then I want to look at the side of the house, and whatever you want it to look at. It will tell you when it sees an animal. It will tell you if it sees a person. You can talk through it. You can hear what's happening in front of it. You can set off an alarm. So quite a lot of functionality. It really helps aid capture, and really helps you to be in more than one place at a time. And so it's a very, very important tool. This is ours deployed. There's a sort of a freestanding stand for this and many other cameras. So you can either have two cameras or you can have one camera, a solar panel on the stand. It's quite useful. The other thing we definitely wanted to have was what I would call a colony trap. I first built one of these in about 2009. Dave was building them even before that. You can use them to catch a lot of dogs. The bigger the thing is, the more animals you can catch in it. But they're modular. They can be made locally if the tools exist. They did not exist in Vieques, and so we bought it on the economy on the mainland, worked with Tomahawk Live Trap to send it to Puerto Rico. So they sent it down. So the cage was waiting when I arrived. I built the electronics package. So the way that this thing works, there is an infrared beam that shoots across. You can install it wherever you want, but we install it in the back of the cage. So if an animal breaks that invisible beam, this door is going to slam shut. You can see these bungee cords here. These are keeping the door under constant pressure, and so it wants to close. And the only thing stopping it from closing is this specialized release mechanism up here that you can't really see. But it wants to close, and so when this beam is broken, that door closes. There's also a remote control, so we can manually trigger it. We could do that while watching through the camera, or we could do it while watching through binoculars or just from a distance. I'm currently up to my elbows in the battery box, getting the whole thing configured. A lot of detail has to be put into these things. So there's things like this tree here is helping to prevent animals from running around it. Same with these rocks and these different obstacles. It just helps prevent them from digging in, makes it more likely that they're going to walk through the door. The cage must be covered completely. This is secured not just with these strong metal clasp that's also staked down to the ground. There's bungees up here, and there's giant zip ties all over the dang place just to make sure that no animals can get out once they're in. Let me see if I can clear up poor Dave. All right, so this is a collar device. This is a pretty high risk, last resort type of tool. You don't want to give this to just anybody. You really want to make sure that people are going to be really responsible with it. You need really good protocols. So what happens is the dog pulls on this piece of plastic. The noose from the outside shoots up around the animal's head. and then the animal is stuck. There is a stopper on it so that it can't choke them, but it is a very aversive tool. It is not a first resort tool. It's not a common resort tool, and it has to be very, very carefully monitored. So we want to make sure that that does in fact happen. Talk a little bit about that in just a second. So I went a couple of days early to start doing a little more tactical assessment to understand what is happening, where are the dogs. Here's a little bit of that.
All right,
So
one,
I knew
two,
that there were
three, four,
dogs at the
five, six,
landfill
seven, eight,
previously,
nine,
and
10,
so I wanted to
11,
go back
12.
there and check. We did not know if there were still dogs there. I went in the middle of the night, and there were in fact 16 more dogs there, so that added to our capture list. I also was putting out traps in advance, and you see this dirt on the floor is very intentional because it gives us tracking information that tells us who's visiting our trap. This trap is configured in such a way that it cannot catch an animal. We're just putting it out in advance to let the animals get used to it and let the soil tell us a little bit about what's happening. The camera can also do that. I was also out putting up cameras in advance, moving the cameras around and trying to get more information, trying to make myself be in two places at once. These cameras help us do that. And then putting out the panel. So this is the incredible Jennifer Toussaint from Animal Welfare League of Arlington. She was one of the three-person team we put together with Dave and myself. Amazing capture professional. So we're putting out the panels for the cage. We want to put these things out early. We want to put them out sometimes weeks in advance, sometimes days in advance. It depends. There's too much variance to get into in this short format. But we need to be pretty deliberate about how we use it. But man, this thing can catch a lot of animals. Here's me baiting it. We don't really have time to show this. Hopefully, if you get the slides after the presentation, you'll be able to review that a little bit more. But I sort of talk through what I'm doing and how I'm baiting. I'm going to skip over to this slide, which is processing a dog out of the collarum. So he is stuck to that collarum. They say they will exhaust themselves pulling. It needs to be really well staked down, and we need to have really good protocols for how we approach. Notice I'm wearing dog gloves. Dave's got a couple of tools here as well. I've got a net already on the dog. The first thing I'm doing is keeping that dog from going backwards because I don't want him to keep putting pressure on his neck. Now I'm covering him with the net, so we're going to get him basically into the net, and then we're going to remove the collarum. So we're putting the net on. Now we're adding a blanket because we want to lower the stress level, and we want to have an additional safety barrier for ourselves as well. Here's the trap trigger, that electronic package from the cage earlier. This is it set up on a porch. So we've got the beam is going here, and I'm sort of explaining in the video. You see the setup. So we've got the cage elements built onto the entrance to this porch. So we can turn abandoned buildings into traps, and we can do quite a lot of things with this caging. This video shows processing of dogs after capture. All it really shows is that the first thing we're going to do is cover up the dogs, and we don't want to use a lot of light. Jennifer didn't have a red light with her, but normally we're using red light or green light just to make it less aversive. And we also don't want to spook dogs that may be exploring other traps, or maybe we're going to try
There's
to
6 dogs
catch
in
with another
total.
trap a little bit later. We want to be pretty much invisible, really stealthy. Trapping requires on all this advanced capture stuff requires a lot of long hours. We were working, we did a 24-hour shift. We slept for about 30 minutes and worked another 5 hours. So that's what it took to get the equipment out and process the dogs. So this is more or less my conclusion slide. And it looks like a lot of nonsense, but all these lines represent tracking data. So every one line is one time that in the case of the red that I have traveled to this place. So I have traveled up this road. I should not use red for this demo. So take my blue line. This is the spot where the car has to stop. Everything else is walking. And this just shows the amount of effort that might need to go into an individual group of animals because every one of these so all these little markers are traps. This represents a deliberate process of where should I put this trap? All right, I need to carry the trap there. I need to bury the floor of this trap, situate it, lock it, pre-bait it, go back, bait it again, set it up for capture, capture an animal, process the animal out, carry that animal to the car, drive that animal to surgery, maybe replace it with another trap. Each one of these markers says what kind of equipment it is. So this is a 48 folding trap, medium-sized dog trap. The skull and crossbones represents the collarum because it is such a high-risk item. We want to make sure we know exactly where it is and exactly when it was set. If we were able to interact with this map, and this is a Cal Topo map, so it's definitely possible, every one of these little waypoints would have a ton of information. about the site and about who we've talked to get access to it and all that type of stuff. So it really gives us a robust set of information for everything we need to know about a specific place. So that data information is extremely important for how we do advanced capture. And so there are a lot of tools and a lot of techniques that can really help us to catch pretty much any animal if they're used correctly. So I will leave you with just my contact information. Feel free to reach out anytime. You've got my email and my website. Happy to just have a chat about your capture needs and give you some advice anytime I can. Thank you very much.